Hello and welcome back to Chairman Mail. So in today's video, I'm going to just talk about how Zanu has ruined Zimbabwean family life. What do I mean by that? I mean the fact that our country, our home country, is basically inhabitable if you do not know anyone in the ruling party, if you do not have a relative who can, help connect you to get training for a job or a job, if you do not have a relative or a Zanu party member friend, life will be very difficult for you in Zimbabwe. Um, Also, you might not have a relative, you might not have a party member, you might not have influential peoples within your circle, but if you know how to play the game, and by play the game I mean if you know who to bribe, when to bribe, how much to bribe, you can go far in Zimbabwe. But if by some chance you can't, engage in corruption because of personal, moral, religious, patriotic reasons, then again, life will be very tough for you in Zimbabwe. So basically, if you have standards, you will not survive in Zimbabwe. What do I mean by standards? I mean, if you don't want to engage in corruption, nepotism, all of that, you won't survive in Zimbabwe. For you to get anything done in Zimbabwe, you have to pay some sort of bribe. Like, just picture this. You are driving your car, or maybe you are riding in a combi. You are on your way to go get an ID card, a passport, or whatever. You get stopped by the police, and you are not willing to pay the required bribe. You won't get anything done. You will not get anything done. Let's say you get to the place where you're going for your ID or passport or whatever, and then after you arrive, you'll obviously be met by a long line, unenthusiastic staff, and all of that. Let's say you really want to get it done. You may end up having to pay a bribe. Let's say you have a daughter, she's just finished her nursing course, teaching course, or maybe she's just bagged her law degree and you want to get her a job. Most likely you have to pay someone, or you have to partake in the national art of nepotism. What am I trying to get at? What I'm trying to get at is Zimbabwe, to anybody who claims to have any moral substance within him, to someone who claims to be of good moral standing, for you to survive in Zimbabwe, it will be very difficult. And as I said in this video, I'm going to talk about how Zanu PF has destroyed family life. Well, because of the hostile environment within our country, we all know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the rampant power cuts, the unemployment, the lack of freedom of speech, the lack of freedom of choice, the lack of freedom of expression, the lack of our fundamental human right to vote out of power, a government that clearly doesn't care about the masses but only for the interests and the interests of the party elite. We don't even have that right. Zanu PF destroys family life. We all know people who have left their families, who have left their husbands, their wives, their children, to go to some country to work, just so that they can afford to send a little bit back home. What ends up happening? Many families get torn apart because you can't expect a man to stay in a foreign country for 8 months, a year, or longer, away from his wife and kids, and you can't expect him, or you also even can't expect his wife to realistically wait for him, so to speak. Some manage to do it, but most do not. This results in the split of many a family. And for anyone who knows how to look at an issue and really identify where things went wrong, for me, I will blame Zanu PF. Because we should be living and working in our own country. We should be gainfully employed in our own communities, giving back to our own communities, developing our own communities. But our labor is being used to fortify other people's communities, while our own communities go malnourished. We go to work jobs where our sisters look after other people's children. While they left their own kids in Zimbabwe, their kids haven't seen their own mothers in years or months. But their mothers are out there looking after other people's kids. We're out here working as builders, Dhaka boys, building up other people's civilizations, while our country crumbles to the ground. I know some people say they don't care about politics. They don't want to talk about it. They don't even want to get involved. But the cruel thing about politics is you may not participate actively in politics, but politics will definitely play a role and affect you in your own personal life. With this in mind, I say to the youth, if you look back into history, if you try to think about why the Zanu PF folk, the original Zanu PF folk, if you want to really rationalize the reason why they decided to go to war, it was not because they had callous disregard for their own life. It was not because they cared so much about seeing their neighbors prosper, but it was because of selfish reasons. What am I saying? Acts that may seem selfless. They justify it as we're going to free the country, blah, blah, blah. That's true. Most sacrifices made by humans, while they benefit other human beings, mostly they are self-serving. What do I mean? There are certain people who have this mindset, and I think I almost became one of those people. There are people who cannot survive in a system that oppresses them. There are certain people who cannot survive in captivity. They just wither and die. So if you have that mindset, if you have that predisposition, then you have no choice but to fight for what's right. When I started making these videos, I was very rushed, but still I was just as passionate as I am now. But as I live from day to day, as I become mature, I begin to understand certain things, and I begin to see that not everything is black and white. There are shades of gray. What am I getting at? I'm saying it used to bug me that it's so clear. Our problem is Zanu. Our problem is corruption. Our problem is ABC. Why don't we just nip it in the bud? Well, because those people have a monopoly on violence. If you do anything, you go missing like Itai Zamara, you'll be arrested and, go through the most, like what happened to Evan Mawarire. He just resigned to fate and he left because he saw that he was fighting a fight that was not worth his time. Because if you fight a fight, you should gain support from the people who you're fighting for. Not that the people you are fighting for won't do much. They might even throw you under the bus in the struggle. So even just chose to check out. And I don't blame him. He did his part. If you were to ask me, he did more than what Nelson Chamisa has done for us. But as I said, I'm talking about how ZANU-PF destroys families. Since ZANU-PF has that effect of destroying the very structure of a family, for some of us, it's clear that while we might have this innate sense of self-preservation, we fear beatings, we fear loss of life, loss of livelihood. Maybe it's time for us to really look into the livelihoods and whatever it is that we are holding so dear that we can't even fight for our freedom. There are millions of Zimbabweans in South Africa. Hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans in Europe. Tens of thousands of Zimbabweans in Australia. Tens of thousands of Zimbabweans in America. thousands of Zimbabweans in China, hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans scattered around the world. Half of those, they left their families behind in Zimbabwe. Half of that half, their marriages will result in divorce. Children will grow up without fathers, mothers, without the love and guidance of those parents. Yes, their parents might be in South Africa, their parents might be in Dubai, sending them money, Air Force Ones and cell phones. But there's more to life than Air Force Ones and cell phones and cars. I think another problem we have as Zimbabweans is we just think our struggle is economic. It's deeper than money. It's about principles that are deeper than money. Families have been torn apart because of this situation we find ourselves in. And it's such a pity. I was of the mindset that the most important thing in life is making money. Because when I grew up in a household that we had the basics, but just barely. We lived just below the poverty line. Maybe on Christmas, maybe once a year, we would just hop over that line, maybe for 2-3 days, and just go back just below the poverty line. Because I grew up in poverty, really, I didn't see the value of family. What do I mean by that? I know most sane human beings realize the value of family. But if you grow up in poverty, you don't realize the value of family. What do I mean by that? It's not normal for a father to leave home for a year or two, leaving his family and kids behind, just so that he can go and get some money to provide for them. It's not normal. When I spent some time away from home, from Zimbabwe, I arrived at my new workplace, and my co-workers were like, "Oh, you're so brave to move so far from home. Do you miss the people back home?" When I run into someone new and I explain to them that, I come from this and this place, one of the first questions I get asked is, when was the last time you saw your family? When was the last time you went back home? Because I'm from such poverty, sometimes I forget that the most important thing in life is to see my family, is to see my cousins, is to see my people. Sometimes I fail to see that because since I grew up in poverty, just being able to provide for them seems like it's enough, but it's not. You should, everybody who wants to should be home, prospering, surviving, living freely at home. but we have this monster that has made our home uninhabitable. What are we going to do about it? If just judging by the look of things, the pulse in the street, it seems like nothing is going to change. But I won't let that deter me from screaming into the void. I know one day I'll reach out to someone who understands me. I know one day my video will make sense to someone who is in the same situation. Or maybe it will make sense to someone who just has the power to empathize, even though they have never been in this position that I'm in, or that we are in as Zimbabweans. Thank you for watching. This has been Chairman Meal. Like, share, and subscribe. Peace.